Hello, welcome to this severe weather update. So let's discuss the severe weather here for US and Canada and even northern Mexico for the next coming days. And if you're watching from southern Texas, stay tuned because there are some things that we didn't mention in the tropical update that are important too. So let's see. This is for today, for Tuesday, day 1. So there's a slight risk from the Oklahoma Panhandle into Ontario, and this marginal risk from Texas, New Mexico into Ontario. So there's this marginal risk again in the northeastern parts of the Ohio Valley. So it goes from like Michigan into Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania, and Maine and parts of those areas, and may affect parts of southern Ontario too, and Quebec and New Brunswick. So stay aware too. Be aware, yes. So the tornado threat goes from New Mexico into Canada, 2%. The wind threat goes from Texas into Canada, 2%, and this 15% from the Oklahoma Panhandle into Ontario, and this highlighted area in Kansas for very strong wind gusts, like 50 knots or 50 knots is probability. So the hatched areas for 65 knots or greater in the hatched areas. So be aware. And there's this 5% there in the northeast and in Canada for wind. For hail, it's also highlighted in Kansas for very large hail, and this 15% from Oklahoma into Ontario, and this 5% from New Mexico and Texas, all the way up into Canada. So stay safe, and let's see here. Scattered strong to severe thunderstorms are expected this afternoon into this evening over parts of the upper Mississippi Valley, southwestward into the high plains, into the central high plains, yes. So this is today, be aware, but tomorrow is kind of tricky. So there's this marginal from Iowa, northern Illinois, and parts of Wisconsin for for wind, and yeah, just wind there, and there's this marginal in New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Kansas for wind and hail. No tornado threat for those areas. But down here for southern Texas, we have a 2% tornado threat tomorrow in southern Texas, and may affect northern Mexico too. So be aware in northern Mexico with water spouts. So they say locally strong gusts may occur in storms in southern high plains and from parts of the Iowa into southern Wisconsin. A brief tornado cannot be ruled out, over far southern Texas late Wednesday night and evening, especially he says like late Wednesday into Wednesday night. Yes, so in association with potential tropical cyclone 1. So the rain bands of this tropical cyclone might bring some water spouts and maybe a tornado into southern Texas tomorrow. So so please be aware there. And then there's this here. This is the Colorado State University, their probabilities of severe weather, and impressively, they have a 15% chance of tornadoes there in Ontario and Minnesota today. There's just a 2% from the National Weather Service, but they are showing some higher tornado probabilities there today. So officially, it's just a 2%, but you never know. They they put this here for a reason. The environment might be favorable there, the Cape, the wind shear, and everything. So be aware there, in case of tornadoes, and they have a little bit higher probabilities of wind and hail too. And this is the National Weather Service, so you can compare. But and the tornadoes, they also have like 2 and 5% for Texas and Louisiana there, because some rain bands from this tropical system might start affecting southern Texas today there. So you you you, you never know, there might be a war spot or two there. So be aware today too, especially later today. But for tomorrow, there's a crazy situation there, because the National Weather Service has like just 2% chance of tornadoes there in southern Texas, but the Colorado State University has up to 10% chance of tornadoes there in southern Texas, and 5% in northern Mexico too, and 2%, and even some small areas there of 2%. So you never know, but it's interesting that they are showing these higher tornado probabilities for tomorrow in Texas there. So you never know. The official forecast is just 2%, but stay safe tomorrow in Texas there. So the wind and the hail threat there too, and the official forecast here. So day 3 through 8, nothing good. So here the warnings and watches, some excessive heat watches there, some red flag warnings, some frost advisories, winter weather advisories, some heat advisories and excessive heat warnings there in Midwest and Northeast, some tropical storm warnings there, like I showed you in the tropics video, some flood watches there too, even flood watches in Kansas there, and some wind advisories. These warnings change all the time, so the so always check there if you want. So excessive rainfall, we already talked about that in the tropics video, but that today there's a moderate risk of excessive rainfall in Texas there, in southeastern Texas, and this light and this marginal, so please stay safe from flash flooding. And there's this marginal there in the northeast, and this marginal from parts of New Mexico all the way into Canada, and this light too in the plains and Midwest. So be aware. They choose this big marginal from New Mexico into parts of the Midwest and Northeast, and this light in parts of Oklahoma and Kansas for tomorrow. And then, of course, in Texas, there's a moderate, a big moderate, and a slight and a marginal there for Texas tomorrow. So please be careful tomorrow there in Texas. And day 3, yes, day 3, that there's a slight there in parts of North Dakota and Minnesota and Wisconsin and South Dakota, and this marginal and this light for Texas too, and this marginal there. Day 4, there's this light there in the north, this marginal in parts of the of New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah, and even Mexico, and even Texas. So be aware, and this marginal there, and this light. So for day 5, there's this big slide there going to Canada in the north, and this marginal there too, and nothing else in the other areas. So snowfall, barely nothing, maybe just a tip, and nothing. So let's see. Uh, some models here. So we wanted to mention some stuff. It's kind of far out. We don't know if it will happen yet, but we have these storm systems there in the north causing the severe weather and everything. But by Friday, it kind of shows a new system there, and I'm interested in something interesting here. So because this is Saturday, so this storm system kind of forms there and goes into Canada. So I'm seeing a trend with some models here saying that there might be some big severe weather there in parts of Quebec and Ontario next Saturday. So please be prepared there in Canada by Saturday, because there might be some severe weather there and a lot of rain and stuff. That's a big low pressure there. So let's see some other models here. So Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, there's kind of this system, and it goes into Canada too. But the Canadian doesn't have this as powerful as the GFS, but there might be some severe weather there in Canada by Saturday. And let's see here, the 0Z Euro. So first, there's this severe weather today there in US and Canada, and then by Thursday, Friday, this system there, and then the Euro's picking up this big low pressure going to Canada by Saturday. It's like tilting the low pressure and everything, doing some crazy stuff. But you can see here, by Saturday and Sunday, there might be some severe weather there in Canada, and some heavy rain too. So be aware. Let's see the HER for today only, for Tuesday the 18th. So the HER has some strong storms firing in Nebraska, some strong storms in Minnesota too, and Ontario. And then he has even more storms associated with this blob there, affecting Ontario and Minnesota. Some strong ones there in Ontario. It's showing by 0Z June 19th, which will be like late, like tonight or something. And it shows still this line in Kansas there, and Nebraska. They had the big hail and wind potential there, and then it keeps more storms there in Iowa and Minnesota, and then there's this low pressure there, and then the storms kind of affect parts of Wisconsin too, and the UP of Michigan, and dissipate there in parts of Canada. So be aware there and stay safe. So let's see some other stuff here. The fire threat is just elevated today in parts of New Mexico and Colorado, and for tomorrow they should. It isn't showing here any elevated, but it has like isolated dry thunderstorms in parts of New Mexico and Arizona. So the fire threat would be elevated in that area too. And day 3 through 8, nothing. So let's see if there's anything else here. Just, I think this is interesting. The precipitation for today in the Gulf, parts of the plains and into Canada. Day 2 in the plains a little bit more, and a lot in Texas that we discussed in the tropics video. Day 3 more in the northern plains and Midwest, more in Texas there in some areas. Day 4 more in the north in areas of the west. Day 5 more in the north and in Canada, and scattered in the south. Day 6 more in Canada and the northeast. And day 7 more in the east there. And in days 1 through 7 here, a lot there in Canada and in the north, and in the Gulf, of course. So let's see here. I think there's something I didn't show you. I showed you the day 2 severe weather, but I didn't show you day 3. So day 3, there's a marginal there from parts of Pennsylvania into Canada. So in the northeast there might affect parts of Quebec and Ontario, and also New Brunswick there. So be aware on day 3, probabilistic just 5%. So storms may produce locally damaging gusts over parts of the northeast on Thursday. So be aware there for day 3, and day 4 through 8, nothing yet. So let's see some more stuff here. Here, some high temperatures. Today there's some very high 90s there, all the way into Maine, and 90s in the south, some 100s maybe in New Mexico in the southwest, and then By tomorrow, more high 90s in the Midwest there. The heat risk there might be extreme in some areas. And then 90s all the way into Canada, like 97 there in Maine even. 90s in the south, 100s in the southwest. Now day 3 here. Some very big 100s in the southwest by day 3, 112 even, and some 90s still in the Midwest and Ohio Valley into the Northeast. Day 4, really hot in the southwest still, up to 114, 100s there in the valley. Even 90s start showing up in parts of the northwest, in the desert there. And then very high 90s all across the northeast, midwest, and these areas here. In the northeast, not so much, but mainly these areas here. So day 5 max, still some very high 90s in the plains, central parts of the Midwest and South, and up to 112 there, and some 90s scattered in the deserts too. Day 6, up to 113 in parts of the Southwest, some 90s there too. Very high 90s in parts of the Central and Southeast, and still some 90s there. Day 7, some very hot 100s in the Southwest still, 100s in other areas, and very high 90s in many areas too. So stay safe, and let's see if this works. Nope. So let me just think if there's something else I need to show you. This is it, I think. Let's just see if they have anything for Canada. Sorry, my typing board is weird. So let's see. They have some warnings there for heat, and mainly it's all heat warnings here. They say heat index might exceed 40 in some areas, and 35 Celsius in many areas there. Some rainfall warnings there in parts of Ontario, and because of all those thunderstorms, there might be a severe thunderstorm watch or two by Ontario as well, like I showed you on the HER. And there's this severe thunderstorm watch for today, mainly afternoon and evening there, so stay safe there. And some scattered warnings in other areas, some wind warnings there, and some air quality advisories there too, and special weather statements for high temperatures and everything. So this is it. Stay safe.